Hey, ya friends. My name's Kenneth, and we're just jumping right into it. Today, we're going to be taking a look at Lost Ark. We're going to be thinking about Lost Ark. This is going to be sort of a game design critique as much as it is a review, as much as it is early impressions. Um, so, the first question that you hear a lot is it pay to win? And, well, let's talk about it. I would say basically yes. Um, but let's talk more. I
Forces
mean,
of chaos
so is WoW,
are on the
right?
move
WoW
again.
has a system
The Arks once saved the
of
world
currency
from the
exchange
demons.
where you can go
We need
in
them again.
um,
Try
and
opening the
buy
tome
a
of
token with
prophecy.
gold, or buy a token
It will show you the
with
path
real money
of your
and put it on the
destiny.
auction house, sell it, and then buy basically in-game gear with that and use it to dominate. So you can definitely pay to gain an advantage in WoW. And even I use this example too of so what makes WoW even worse than Lost Ark is the fact that it has a subscription model as well. So if you don't pay your $15 a month, there, well, there's no chance to win, right? So you have there's some buy-in there. So you don't even get the potential to win without paying, which in my eyes makes it significantly worse. Um, so yeah, I would say WoW is a worse offender in that sense. At least with Lost Ark, there's no fee to connect to the game, and you can, from what I've read and my own research, um, with Lost Ark, you can basically not pay a dime and do all the content if you go really hard in about 7 to 10 months. So that's really good. So probably someone like me, it would certainly take longer. Um, but I do, my just personal opinion here. I like to support the games I play if I really enjoy them, and I know everyone else has um, a different financial situation, but um, I could see me definitely renewing. I was a founder, um, but I could definitely see me renewing uh, the subscription type model they have with the wings. Uh, yeah, so that's called the Crystal Aura. So I could definitely see me re-upping that after the Founders Pack wears off. Um, gives you some little advantages. It's really nothing major. Uh, so character creation with Lost Ark. Um, Not a lot to say here. It's really, really good and it's really in depth. It's really impressive. Um, you can add scars, you can add tattoos, you can have different pupil sizes, different pupil types, all that jazz. I mean, it's got everything you could want except maybe a boob slider, a butt slider, and a height slider. Um, but everything else, it's got it. Um, One thing I noticed about the game um, early on, I mean within the first 5 to 10 minutes of playing it, is that there's a little too much exposition. Um, they don't really just put the player right into the gameplay. And so that's kind of a design faux pas because you really just want it to be like a sandbox, right? You want to just kind of throw the player into it and let them figure it out, and it really shows that you have faith in the player. But they have these sort of test ground things going on. I'm not really a fan of that. Um, there were some censorship issues with the game. Certainly some early censorship. It kind of relents after around level 10 to 12. You start to see more skimpy outfits. After all, this is a mature rated game. It's unclear. If you push Amazon on it, they kind of say we didn't ask for any censorship, but it's definitely in the game. So they, on one hand, they acknowledged it. At one point, they said the outfits would be in the game, but they would be white drops. And then they kind of go back on that. They've actually deleted some posts. So that's definitely not good. They can't really seem to get their story straight about what was going on there. So I'm not a fan of that double talk and that lack of transparency. Another issue that I've had with the game itself is that there's a lack of jump. You can't jump in the game. That's very bad for an MMO, even if it's an AARPG. The teleport, I think all the classes have a teleport. I could be wrong. The Bard certainly does. That's what I'm playing. That makes up for it a little bit, but I would like to see a jump implemented. There's fast travel everywhere. This is sort of another design faux pas, and the reason I say that is because it discourages exploration, right? And the game encourages exploration elsewhere, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but as sort of an organic exploration, fast travel kind of hurts that. It also hurts your art team when you're just skipping chunks of art that you put money into these clusters, and you want people looking at that stuff, right? So that's an issue. The one primary concern I had with the game early on, but it's less of a concern now, is that it's just not difficult enough early on. And that's a problem when you have an MMO and you're trying to foster socialization, which is probably the most key element in an MMO. And the way a game does that through difficulty is, well, you make the quest content hard enough that you need to group. And when you group, that creates an opportunity for players to socialize. And that's a great thing to have happen in an MMO. The flip side of that with Lost Ark is that the questing is so fast that it doesn't have time to matter. You're in and you're out. I mean, you blink an eye and you're going to be level 50. Is that a con? I would say it's a con, but players these days are so torn on whether or not whether an MMO actually needs a quest system. I'll just leave that to y'all to decide, because I've had these arguments a million times. I think that quests are necessary for an MMO, and I believe that they are primary content, and if you do an MMO well, they should actually make up about 75 to 80% of the content in the game, because when you look at who you're aiming a game at, it's for the average player. Some people would call that a casual, right? And if you don't put enough of a focus on that, you risk losing your casual audience. So the next thing is the adventure journal. Now, this game is super systems heavy. I've criticized WoW in the past for being essentially a modular game, and it has become more and more modular. And that just means that it lives in parts. and you can take parts on and take parts off, stick them on, take them off, whatever. You see this in Legion. You see this with the weapon system they had there in Legion, the artifact weapon, I believe it was. And it's a way to give players power and just take it right back. And that's a wholly negative thing. Now this game it doesn't seem to be using its modularity to do that. It is very systems heavy, but the systems actually seem to play well together, and they don't seem to use the systems as a way to deliver character power and then strip the character power back off. They don't seem to be doing that. And one of the mechanics, one of the things they use to sort of tie all these systems that could otherwise be very confusing together is the adventure journal. And then they have other systems like collector system and so on. Collections, I believe they call it. But the adventure journal and the other system, it seems to take all these systems and sort of tie them together. And the adventure journal, in my experience, it's been amazing. It is, if you are a collector, this game is your wet dream. I mean, it is just, it makes its money, I think, off of collectors, because I've never seen a better system in a game for collectors. And collectors make up a huge portion of, well, they really make up, like, if you believe in the old Venn diagram or whatever of the types of players that play a game, you know, collectors are a huge chunk of them. So the game just does really well with that. Now, we're getting this game a little late here in the US, so it's on a late patch. And so we don't really get to see how the game started out here. What we know, it almost feels overwhelming. They actually had to cut content out of the game. In the Korean version, I believe there's like, you actually get to do the 10 levels, and they don't just throw you into the game and then stick an exposition prologue system on it and then sort of retroactively tell you the story. There was actually a level 1 to 10. But some of the stuff they actually cut out because there was so much stuff in the game. I guess they felt the need to cut some of it out. But we're starting on a late patch, so we don't really get to see what the Korean folks got to see. We don't really know what the progression of the game was like. We just know that there's a bunch of content. Oh wow, it's slapping us in the face. So that's unfortunate, because I would have liked to seen, to have the patches rolled out so we could kind of experience what the early versions of the game was like. But we're getting kind of a polished game here. One of the other systems that sort of stand out to me that I really liked is the Rapport System. It's like their take on Reputation. But it's really well sort of woven into the world through collectibles and different quests, emotes, and things you can get to use to, buy, essentially get your reputation up with the different folks that are part of the Rapport System. So that's a big thumbs up for me. I've always liked reputation systems in games. And I certainly look forward to doing more of that in Lost Ark. The early dungeons, Toxic Claw Cavern, not that great. A little bit linear, a little bit rudimentary. Again, sort of, this hurts the sense of the world when you have two different difficulties. what creates a sense of world is consistency, and two different difficulties actively works against that. So
A pillar of light.
it really tarnishes the sense of world. But this is not true of raid content, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later.
After 500 years of waiting.
So, and again, with the dungeons, one thing I did like about the dungeon was that you actually had to travel to a place in the world to enter the dungeon. So that creates a sense of world. That adds to a sense of world. Um, so it was kind of confusing to me there because that creates a competing design interest against having two different difficulties. So on one hand, you decrease the sense of world. The other hand, you increase it, and you have a net zero outcome. So that's a confusing piece of design to me. Okay. One thing that sort of takes away from the game for me is that there's too many pop-ups. There's too many guide alerts. I mean, they're just foistering this on us. You got a red button lighting up every 2 seconds, and that seems to continue well into level 40. It doesn't seem like it would ever end, right? There's always a red button popping up on your interface. You need to trace it down and find the thing you need to click on to turn it off. So that sort of takes you out of the world a little bit. Uh, there's a heavy currency focus in the game. There's a ton of different currencies that can be sort of a little confusing for the player, especially new players that are new to this type of game. With the quest in particular, okay, there's a lot of stop and go gameplay here, and my understanding is that not only was the 1 to 10 removed in the port from Korea to the US, but also a lot of quest objectives were cut down, and I would give this a thumbs down. The quests are all scant on objectives. The quests literally take a few seconds to do. And I'm told the Korean version is much better in this regard. The game also had this issue of not sorting the servers by native language, so you get a lot of non-English speakers even on NA. People confuse this concern with racism. It's nothing to do with racism. It is that simply that when you have a game and you have a server, it's very useful to be able to communicate with the people on that server. It's important for the English speaker and it's important for the non-English speaker, and they sort of dropped the ball on that. So the first big dungeon of the game was just absolutely amazing. It was called Mariah Ruins, I believe. I couldn't believe how much effort. So if you've noticed, I've given a lot of negative commentary so far. We're going to start to turn that around just a little bit here, and we're going to take the flip side of what we've been saying here. So, but Mariah Ruins. So this is where I had a pretty low opinion of this game up until this point. I think this dungeon's around level 20 or so. I can't really remember, but I could not believe how much effort they put into this dungeon, and the fact that it was level 20. In this dungeon, those of you that's done it, I mean, there are some set pieces here that will just, I mean, they look like they should be designed for any game. Okay, any game would be proud to have this as their end game content. Okay, there is a serious sense of scale going on in that dungeon. The cut scenes, I won't spoil anything, but they were absolutely phenomenal. I could not believe it. I actually wound up doing the dungeon 2 or 3 times. So, okay. the next bit is Strongholds. These are basically better garrisons. If you ever played WoW, you know that that was their excuse for player housing, and it was a sorry excuse. It looks like Lost Ark sort of took a note out of their playbook here, but uh, they really they went a bit further too. The what they've done is they've made it such that the resources aren't required strictly. They're not acquired strictly passively. And the reward currency, so the difference is the reward currency isn't the base game currency. So like in WoW, you had people getting tons of gold just passively for not doing anything. So you would log off and your garrison would just accumulate resources. The role play was that these followers of yours, you were the commander, and they would just go out in the world and get resources for you. But that's not happening in Lost Ark. So you actually have to do things. You have to log in. Missions look like they take about 2 hours, and that's how you get resources. And then the resources that you get are not gold. So you can't just turn around and spend these resources on the auction house, right? Um, Garrisons damaged WoW in a way that would actually turn out to harm it for years to come. But that's for another video. Um, Strongholds are not that. Strongholds are what garrisons basically wish they could have been. And I've certainly had a lot of fun engaging with that. So I'm assuming a lot of other people have as well. So this kind of gets to the question, right? Lost Ark does uh, almost everything wrong from a traditional game design perspective. And we can argue that because there's an idea these days of the modern MMO, uh, versus something like classic WoW, which is like I would say is a classical game design and a really timeless game design. Um, Lost Ark kind of goes against almost all of that, right? But I still really like this game. I would actually go so far. I mean, I've put 46 hours in this game. Uh, that's more than I've put in any game, but it's doing everything wrong from a traditional design perspective. But I would say almost everything wrong, not quite everything. So we're going to talk about what it's doing right. Okay, so the game's actually great, but why? That's the question. For one, the combat is amazing. The combat is crisp, okay? It's weighty, it's punchy, it's visceral. You feel it. The visuals are just astonishing, okay? And what really ties it together and gives it the weight that it has is that there's vocal emotes, right? Your character, when they perform an action, they perform an ability, they will say something. So it goes back to sort of the oldest sort of fantasy trope of this is an actual incantation. Your character has to say the spell to perform it. In a sense, I don't know about all the classes, but this is definitely how it works with Bard. And it just sort of all that coming together really just makes for some of the finest combat in a game that I've ever seen. Um, the animations are great. Um, they're just super fluid, and the overall art style, the aesthetic of the game is very appealing and very nice. But this is what I think the big thing. This is the big thing here um, that makes the game great. There's a journey. There's a journey in this game. that exist in in-game that we have not seen in an MMO in forever, right? This went away with Classic WoW. This went away with like TBC. Coming into Wrath of the Lich King, the journey was dead. You had multiple difficulties for your in-game raid content. When you have that, there can be no journey. There is no journey if you're repeating the journey. If I have to do normal mode XYZ to do hard mode XYZ to do mythic mode XYZ, that's not a journey. A journey is A to B to C, not A1 to A2 to A3 to B1 to B2. That's not a journey. That's not a journey that can be told by your character that would make sense, right? So, just one difficulty. This is what they've nailed at in-game. This is extremely important from a design perspective. It's fundamental. It's fundamentally how a player understands the world. And one of the only devices by which a player can tell their story. So WoW has been getting this wrong for a very long time. And this is one of the most important things, ultimately, that Lost Ark has done right. Alright, we've reached a good stopping point for the video. Do me a big favor. If you like the video, like the video. If you got any feedback for me, leave a comment down below. And if you want to see more of my content, please be sure to subscribe. Alright, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.